In this video, we're going to go over how to view and set multipathing policies from the command line. We're going to use ESX CLI for all of it. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to go over is how to change the multipathing policy for a particular device. So first you got to see which devices you have and then choose which ones you want to change. So to do that, let's list out our devices. Alright, so we got a bunch of them here. I'm going to use this one here. As you can see right now, it's set to most recently used, as you can see right here. Now let's go ahead and change it. The device ID, and then we're going to change it to fixed, so the -p parameter is going to specify which PSP you want to use. Alright, no feedback is good feedback. Let's go ahead and list out just that device. To do that, just use the -d parameter again, along with the device ID. Alright, so now you can see it was MRU, and now we're to fixed. It's pretty straightforward. Now let's look at some of the other more in-depth commands for the devices, particularly device configuration as they relate to which multipathing policy they're using. So there's some list commands we can use, but you have to be aware of where you're at within the ESX CLI namespace. So if you want to look at a device that's configured for fixed or round robin, you have to be in the right namespace, but you also have to be looking at a device that has that configured, or you're not going to get any results. So I know that was very clear and not confusing at all, so let me try to clarify. So we're going to use the same device that we just used. And we're going to, right now it's set to fixed, so if we chose PSP round robin and looked at the device config for that, you have to say get. Again, store it is not a namespace in ESX CLI. Alright, see, we get a message here that says, do not use this device does not use the round robin path selection policy. So just be aware that whenever you're looking at particular path selection plugins within ESX CLI, that if you're trying to look at a particular device, you have to be in the right namespace as it relates to which plugin that device is configured for. So we know that one is configured for fixed, so let's go into the fixed namespace for PSP and look at the device config. Okay, so now we actually get some information. There's not a whole lot here with fixed. You got the configured path, or configured preferred path, which is blank. If you haven't went in and actually set that preferred path, then that's gonna always be blank, or if you've reset to default. It shows you the device ID and what the preferred path is, which basically is the first path that it picked up. So we can set the preferred path on here if we want. So let's set it to what it currently is. So let's store it again. I caught it this time. So this time, instead of get, we're going to say set. Again, we need the -d. Then we're going to use the dash, I think it's -p. Yeah, -p parameter. So again, we're going to use the path that's already configured on there, but we're going to set it as our preferred path. HPA 35. Channel 0, target 3, lung 0. Alright, no feedback is good feedback. Let's take a look. Alright, now you can see right up here the configured preferred path is set, and it's set to the full IQN. Alright, if you want to, we can set that back to default. So let's do that. And the -e parameter is going to set that back to default. Alright, no feedback is good feedback. You guys, I'm going to have you guys saying that by the end of these videos. So again, let's take a look. Okay, now you can see the configured preferred path is now empty because we set it back to default. Alright, enough of the fixed path. Let's do, there's another one called generic. Before we talked about, you have to make sure that whichever namespace you're in for PSP, whether it be fixed or round robin, that the device had to be configured for that. Well, there's a namespace called generic, which will get you any information from any device, regardless of which PSP is configured with. It's going to be generally the same syntax. Device config get. So now you can see it looks a little different. You can see, you know, here it's preferred, and then the current path. So it looks a little different. Let's do this on a round robin, a device configured for round robin, because you'll see a little bit different results. Let's list that out real quick. This one down here is configured for round robin. Refresh screen. And I'm just stored all over the place. And I have device config. Alright, here you can see there's a lot more options. You know, you can see the policies RR. See the IOPS here is set to 5,000. Now that's not the default. I had been playing with this already, and I had set it to 5,000. Here's bytes. If you're using the byte as a ceiling, that would be the number of bytes that would be used before the path would change. All right. We'll come back to this one and how to actually use that to set certain options, but let's go into the round robin namespace and look at that device again. Device config. Device config get. No matter how many times I type this, I always seem to mess it up. Okay. Here you see the same information, but it's delimited out, so it's in a much better list format than in one line. So you can see that the limit type is set to default, and again the IOs are set to 5,000, which means the path will change in a round robin environment every 5,000 IOs. So the first thing we're going to do is set this back to default. I'm going to use the set this time, and the -t. Now we're going to use the -t is type, so it accepts default, IOPS, and bytes. So if you put default here, it's going to put everything back to the default for that device. That's a new one, Strawage. Alright, no feedback is good feedback. Say it with me. Let's list that out again. Alright, here you're going to see the I/O operation limit has been set back to 1,000. So let's go and try to change some of these parameters. Let's change the I/O limit to 2,000 and the use active unoptimized path from false to true. Dash capital I for IOPS. Say, what did I say, 22,000 to 2,500. And dash U is the use active unoptimized paths parameter. So let's set that to true. Now you notice no feedback is good feedback, as I've been saying, but in this case, as you're going to see when we do a list, that even though you got no feedback and you think everything was successful, it actually didn't change the I/O parameter. Okay, you can see it changed the use active unoptimized path from false to true, but it's still at 1,000 for the I/O limit. So why is that? Well, whenever you're changing the defaults from either the byte limit or the I/O operation, you have to specify a type. If you're changing the byte limit, you have to specify the type to bytes. If you're changing the I/O limit, you have to set the limit type to IOPS, or you're not going to be able to change these values. So let's go through and do that again, but this time we're going to actually specify the type. So again, the dash I for IOPS to 2,500. And this time I'm going to say dash T for type, it's lowercase t. Say IOPS. In this case, no feedback is good feedback. Let's take a look. I know some of you must be saying, why the hell is he typing this over and over instead of just using up arrow? I find I remember things better as if I type them more, so I just always type them. Alright, here now you can see that the limit type is now at IOPS instead of default, and the I/O limit is 2,500. Let's revisit the, well first let's set that back to default. So dash T for type and default. So let's revisit the generic namespace. So again, if we do the generic namespace here, we're going to get, you know, policy, IOPS, all in one line. Well, now if you want to set a certain item using this namespace, you can. The only difference here is in the parameters. It's still going to be dash D for the device, but now you're going to say dash C, which means, you know, configuration. And after that, in quotes or single quotes. You're going to type in which one of these you want to change: policy, IOPS, bytes. So again, we're going to change the IOPS. So we'll say IOPS equals, let's change it to 4,000. Now you'll notice I'm not specifying the type here, and that's because if you look up there, there's no type, which I just noticed that. Well, that's why. So if you want to change the, I knew you didn't have to specify the type in order to change the IOPS using the generic device configuration. I just didn't realize that the type wasn't actually specified when you get it from the generic device configuration, as opposed to when you get it from the round robin device configuration. There's actually a parameter for type. All right, let's execute that and do another view or a get. Alright, now you can see the IOPS has changed from 1,000 to 4,000. And again, if you want to change this back to the default, again, we're going to use the round robin namespace. -t is default. And I did not put the set parameter. This video is probably 4 minutes longer than it should be due to my typos. So, no feedback is good feedback. And if you do another listing, you're going to see it's back to 1,000. And the limit type is no longer IOPS, it is default. Well, that's all the configuration that we're going to do with the command line that relates to path selection policy.